Waterfall Security Solutions, the market leader in unidirectional gateway technology. Their industrial cybersecurity technology protects critical infrastructure and control systems from remote online cyber attacks. It's installed around the world, including nuclear plants in the U.S. and electric grids. Their unidirectional security gateway creates an impassable physical barrier preventing communications from flowing into industrial control networks, enabling safe and secure IT and OT integration, remote monitoring, and cloud services. Visit securityweekly.com/SCADA. The first 100 listeners who register will receive a free copy of SCADA Security, What's Broken and How to Fix It, written by Waterfall's VP of Industrial Security, Andrew Ginter. Pony Express. Check out their line of penetration testing devices, including the Pwn Pad, Pwn Phone, and Pwn Pro. For enterprises, there's Pwn Pulse, providing continuous visibility into wired, Wi-Fi, and Bluetooth spectrums across all physical locations, including remote sites and branch offices. For all those hard-to-reach places, there's Pony Express. Visit them on the web at ponyexpress.com. In control of cyber risk with Tenable.io, the first vulnerability management platform built for today's elastic assets like cloud, containers, and web apps. Discover a fresh, asset-based approach that prioritizes vulnerabilities while seamlessly integrating into your environment. And improve ROI with the first elastic licensing approach based on assets, not IP addresses. Tenable.io delivers the data and context you need to secure your elastic attack surface. Start your free Tenable.io trial today by visiting Tenable.io. Signal Sciences is the industry's first web protection platform that works in any cloud, any container, any platform as a service, and any modern application architecture. The Signal Sciences web protection platform can be deployed in next-generation WAF, RASP, or reverse proxy modes, giving customers ultimate flexibility and coverage. Protect your web applications with Signal Sciences web protection platform. Signal Sciences, securing code and connecting teams. For more information, check them out at signalsciences.com/ESW. Welcome back, everyone, to Enterprise Security Weekly. A couple more quick announcements. InfoSec World 2017 is being held on April 3rd through the 5th in Orlando, Florida. Security Weekly listeners receive 10% off the conference or World Pass using the code OS17-SW. Hear talks from Kevin Johnson, Rich Mogul, Cory Doctorow, and more. Visit infosecworld.misty.com to register today. The 10th anniversary edition of Source Boston is being held also in April. 24th through the 25th is the training sessions, and 26th through the 27th are the talks featuring awesome ones from everyone in the security community who is being accepted to present at the conference. Events will take place in Boston at the Courtyard downtown, Marriott downtown. Security Weekly listeners receive a $100 discount on either the training or conference passes when you use the code Security Weekly. Visit sourceconference.com for more information. We're doing this party bus thing, right? Are we ready to announce that on air at InfoSec World, Don? Are we?
Sure.
Did I just announce it? I teased.
Can I just add a quick comment, though? I noticed that when Paul said that to Don, he picked up an ice pick first. So, so don't feel any pressure, Don.
Get the party bus, right? And if your cigar is plugged, I can fix that with this tool. That's all.
It was supposed to be a secret, and you were going to be the only person on the bus. It would make it easier to dispose of the body.
Yeah, that was a black thing over my face. Yeah,
it's like Joe Pesci when he walks in and goes, he thinks he's getting made. They shoot him in the back of the head.
Pretty much. Welcome to your party bus, Paul.
Yeah, we wanted an opportunity to get together with the Security Weekly team that's going to be down at InfoSec World and some of the other security professionals that we don't get to interact with as much as we want. You know, it's a small security community. A lot of us bump into each other at events, but outside of it, it's a little less common. Or we do remotes like these, which are fun, but it's not the same as being right there. So we wanted to get some people to come by the ITProTV studios and hang out here, but it's an hour and a half away. So We'll load up on a bus. We'll drive up here, have a good time, eat some dinner, drive back. It'll be a blast, and nobody has to drive.
Oh, but what got us was Don's like, well, there'll be booze on the bus. So, like, security people are like, all right, so wait a minute, let me get this straight. You're going to put me in a bus, there's going to be booze. You can pretty much drive me wherever you want, and we're in, right? Like, it doesn't matter. Like, your studio, that's great. I mean, that was just an added bonus. Like, you could just, like, make circles around the hotel. We would have been happy.
Well, that's true. Put the bus with the blacked out windows, and they just sit out there, and some guys rock it occasionally from the outside.
Exactly.
Yeah, that kind of thing.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, we're looking forward to that, Don. That's going to be a lot of fun. Putting your infrastructure in the cloud is kind of fun, too, sort of.
It is.
Good transition.
One of the you like that, huh? One of the things I was thinking of with cloud bleed, which is a different, obviously not necessarily infrastructure, somewhat infrastructure related with Cloudflare. But it's not like I'm taking my physical system and I'm making it virtual in the cloud. However, it kind of got me thinking about why a lot of organizations are still to this day hesitant about putting their infrastructure in the cloud. And if you look at the vulnerabilities, such as Cloud Bleed, for example, in my estimation, that was still fixed pretty quickly, right? And I think a lot of the other issues that we've seen at the so-called like hypervisor level, when there have been issues, they are fixed quickly. Is it safe now to put my infrastructure in the cloud? Is the ability of the major cloud providers to provide security and provide updates to the underlying infrastructure, is that increased, and is that a benefit? And do they do it better than I can? And does it have less impact?
I would say that it is, in my opinion, is safe to deploy in the cloud, and companies should be doing it right now. There's a few ways to look at it. That if you deploy something yourself on premises and it's deployed incorrectly, you don't secure it, you don't follow a hardening guide, and it gets compromised, it's your fault. You suck it up, you take it, and that's that. You deploy it in the cloud, and if something like that happens, people are up in arms. It's the cloud provider's fault. But a lot of times we just misunderstand what it is we're buying into. There are fully managed solutions like Gmail, right? Where you have no idea about the servers, the application underneath, everything is completely invisible. It's software as a service, and that's that. And you've got Google's crack team of security officers and IT infrastructure specialists and people that are in a pay grade most companies couldn't dream of affording. The best talent in the world. Same thing at AWS. But then there's technologies that you deploy, like I could deploy an EC2 instance, and I use the Amazon Linux AMI image, right? So it's Linux as approved by Amazon. I know their security officials have picked over it. But once it's deployed, now it's up to me. And I can screw it up. And thanks to the cloud, I can screw it up at scale.
Oh, yeah.
I can have 1,000 instances all weakly configured. That's entirely my fault. So you still have to take precautions. But I think the infrastructure itself is as safe as you're going to get on premises.
I think it certainly lessens the burden for an organization in terms of infrastructure, right? I don't have to worry about the hardware. I don't have to worry about the underlying systems within that hardware, right? Like ILO and all those other. I mean, there's I put an embedded system inside of your server to manage it. And we've seen issues there. I don't have to worry about that hypervisor level, and I think that's where people have concerns today about leaking memory, jumping from guest to host and those kind of things. I think largely those are taken care of for you, and that should weigh heavily in your decision. To Don's point, once you get above those layers, in most circumstances, and there's lots of layers above that, but even just getting above that hypervisor level, I think is a huge help to a lot of organizations. And I think it's just an experience and cultural disconnect that slowly is gaining ground, but I still think there's people that are hesitant.
Well, I just recently, actually not that recently, that was last year, but I had the opportunity to try and talk to, I don't know, it was like 1,000 people who were considering buying this product that this company was selling, which was a cloud-based solution. And I was supposed to talk to them about why this was a good idea. And the example I used was the CDC, the Center for Disease Control. If you're just a little country doctor, damn it, Jim.
Yeah.
But you're out in some, Western Massachusetts in some small town, and you see a case of yellow fever. This is in the news today, and not in Massachusetts, but they're saying yellow fever was coming up from Brazil, and you've never seen yellow fever. You have no idea what it is, and so on. You may not treat it correctly. But if you have access to the Center for Disease Control and they've seen everything that there is to see, all of a sudden, maybe those solutions are. So really what the word then you're looking for, or at least I was looking for, is economies of scale. So now I'm collapsing my security profile and my security surface into one big group. And like Don said, if they do it badly, that's a big problem because now they've screwed it up for everybody. I can also hope that someone else gets yellow fever and they learn about it before I get it, which I know that sounds awfully self-serving, but it's my enterprise that I want to protect. So I'm saying, okay, well, too bad that John's muffler shop got yellow fever and now they're hosed, but now the company learned about it and they fixed it before it ever got around to me. So I get the advantage of John's muffler shop suffering from yellow fever first. So I like the idea that all this stuff is getting stabilized. I think all my initial concerns were about driver level stuff. They were about hypervisor level stuff. And I haven't been running into those problems at my level. because they really have just smoothed all the rough edges of that out. I'm not seeing stuff crashing and blue screens of death and all these weird things. You still see some stuff going, I've just detected I'm running on this and I'm not going to run anymore, so I'm going to crash to a shell. Yeah. But all that seems to be resolving as it becomes more standard.
Well, and then I think it takes moving to the virtualized infrastructure in the cloud, it takes away a lot of the opportunistic and or I should say, it takes away some of the targeted attacks, right?
Yep.
Like, yeah, I know there's lots of companies that are hosted in the cloud. Targeting them becomes difficult.
I agree.
I can get into the infrastructure, but how do I then find exploits and vulnerabilities that let me like really target? And CloudBeat, I thought was a good example of that. Mm-hmm. It's really hard to target. I'm sure someone will correct me if I'm wrong, but when I read it, it was really hard to target specific areas. Whereas if you start building this infrastructure yourself, now I can target just your infrastructure and exploit those vulnerabilities, and I know who I'm targeting. When it's in that larger environment, it almost takes out a lot of that ability for me to target
and that infrastructure is shifting too. The cloud infrastructure, because I'm out there looking at it, unlike your infrastructure would sit there static for the next 10 years, and I can go, I've been looking at these guys for weeks and months and years even. If it goes into cloud, Amazon may make a change to the way the whole infrastructure works next week, and all of a sudden all my collection of intel is gone. I mean, I could flip it around and go, well, yeah, but now I just have to focus on one big bubble. But I agree with you 100%. I think the cloud really has created a kind of interesting environment that makes things like that less of a threat.
Don, Jason, thoughts on that?
One of my thoughts was just, as soon as you start saying infrastructure, this is stuff that, at least in my mind, because I worked as an infrastructure sysadmin for a few years, if you screw up, lots of things go down. And so, okay, we're gonna outsource this infrastructure to somebody else. Well, who's working on it? Amazon? Somebody, I don't know, and so you have a little bit of you got to let go of that control, and that can be really hard. Yeah, exactly. And so, but as people get more comfortable with it being out there and seeing how things work and seeing what issues cropped up and how they've been resolved and stuff like that, I think you'll see more companies become comfortable with the idea of deploying this sort of thing and saying, yeah, okay, I can see that they're doing a good job. I don't necessarily have to be able to call an individual into my office to yell at them because something went down. I can contact, whoever I need to get the information I need back from my cloud provider, my infrastructure provider, and answer the questions that I'm getting inside of the business, and have some good confidence that if there aren't any issues, they're going to be resolved quickly, potentially much quicker than I could do myself. But you're going to have to get that comfort level first, and people are going to have to be willing to let go of that and accept, less control over the details.
And in that mid-size enterprise, when you get in that mid-size enterprise, you can't afford all that expertise.
Right.
I mean, when they go out and they say, I need a security officer, I need a malware specialist, I need a pen tester, I need an incident responder, I need a forensicator. Wow. You go talk to a mid-size enterprise, and even one that's fairly significant, and start telling about those kind of costs when you do an audit, they're going to be running to the cloud as fast as they can run, because just being able to consolidate that piece of economies of scale is such an advantage to mid-level, even large enterprises, because that's just a huge expenditure that you got to do when you got to do infrastructure management, security, and all that stuff at the same time.
Yeah, and the cloud gives us the opportunity to do a lot of things that we couldn't afford to do ourselves, or we don't want to. So, for example, you take the S3 outage last week, right? It was 5.5 hours or something, and it was one of the Amazon regions, US East, that basically had a huge outage. Well, if I had put all my storage in S3 buckets right there in US East, then they were offline during that time. And if I were doing that myself and I had it in one data center, how would I fix that? I'd store it in a second data center also. So now I got to stand up an entirely separate data center, and that's just too much money, too much effort, too much staff. Right. But with AWS, I could just say, all right, well, you know what? Let me do a cross-region replication, and I'm going to replicate my S3 buckets over to US West or Europe West or one of the other ones. And so we could easily replicate that. They have that technology built in there. But they don't treat you with kid gloves. They say, if you want to put all your data just in one region, fine, we'll let you do it. There's not even a warning, right?
Although I did hear there was problems with data replication in that S3 outage as well.
Was there?
Yeah. They couldn't connect to it either, yeah.
Yeah, there were issues with that. But to your point, Don, 5 hours is probably less time than it would take you to fix that in your own environment, to be honest with you.
And I mean, think about the cost. I did one once where we were doing a disaster planning for a company, and they had a cold site. And I mean, it was going to take days, if not longer, to get them up and running. So they switched to a warm site. And with the warm site even, it was a lot of infrastructure because they had to actually go to another city that was distant, got it out, because one of my things was out-of-band weather, out-of-band meteorites, out-of-band EMPs, all this kind of stuff. And so they had to go to another city, buy the space, buy the drops, put everything up, and get it kind of roughly set up. I mean, compared to just saying I'm going to go live on Europe, and plus you get the advantage of load balancing as well when you data replicate across those different buckets. And that's a really nice advantage to have, to me, as opposed to setting up your own, whole data center in, Los Angeles, so that you've got New York and LA, and you've got space out there, and security and management and physical problems and whatever.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys have seen it, but like Microsoft's Azure Site Recovery, I kind of call it, I probably shouldn't say, but it's like the crack rock of cloud services that they give you a little bit, right? Like, hey, you keep your on-premises stuff. It's no big deal, right? You have all that on-premises stuff the way you normally do, and we're just going to back it up into Azure. We'll back it up right here, nice and cheap. And then the moment you have an outage, something goes wrong, you flip a switch and everything powers up right inside of Azure. And now you're running in the cloud. And maybe you fix your on-premises stuff, or you say, what, why bother? I just migrated to the cloud. Yeah. And now you're all up in there. And for a small or medium-sized business, it's so easy to implement that it's like that first dose is free kind of model, and it works out great.
Until you get the $20,000 per hour bill of running in the cloud. Oops.
And I would call it crack rock.
Yeah.
All of it's like that.
I mean, I do want to go back to the S3 thing, because I think that the argument that I hear from that you would naturally hear from financial organizations is, well, 5 hours worth of downtime that can cost us, back to your comment about cost structure, right? That can cost you millions and millions of dollars.
You bet.
Where that's why some of those organizations are doing it themselves today, because even if it costs you $1 million, 5 hours of downtime is $10 million, or potentially the loss of the whole business. So
if you're doing hot site failover, I mean, 5 hours of downtime to a financial could be the end, not just cost $1 million. It could be the end of the business. I mean, the enterprise could be gone. Not to mention people don't trust you. I mean, if somebody logs in, they want to make a trade because they think the world's ending, and they can't even get to the site. It just says, sorry, not available. You're going to be changing companies really fast. So maintaining multiple active hot site with data replications, that's a very pricey thing. And again, being able to push that out across all these buckets might, but financials are always going to be reluctant to let go of that,
and I think that's where we're seeing the resistance. I think if you're providing, let's say, security services to an organization, and you're letting them do any kind of analytics, whether it be vulnerability management or SIM or any of these analytics products in the cloud, like a couple hours worth of downtime is not going to cost you your business, right? And so I think, even if you're a consumer in some of these areas, you can afford that downtime. Not that you want that downtime, but it's not the end of your business, and the cost model still makes sense because the cost of doing it yourself is much, much greater. So,
I was pitching I'm sorry, go ahead, Don.
The big players, they don't just span like more than one region with the same provider. They span more than one provider, right? Like Apple's iCloud, where their infrastructure is split between Amazon and Microsoft Azure. So that, if you're a financial, you need multiple data centers, sure, set them up with different providers, and now you've got full redundancy.
Right. No, I agree. No, it's a great solution to the problem. So what else do you think holds back organizations from putting their infrastructure in the cloud?
There's the knowledge gap.
Yeah. I think, the cloud has always been this smoking quagmire out on the horizon. It's not clearly defined. So I think if you're a cloud provider, just the fact that it's called the cloud is worrisome. Yeah. I mean, if I'm an IT manager, I know when I ran a mainframe, I wanted control of it. I wanted my hands on it. When something burned up, I wanted to see where it burned. I wanted to know about it. And telling me now that some nebulous organization, or even some well-known organization like Amazon, is going to take all my controls, impose their own controls on me, tell me what I can do and what I can't do, That's a tough one. And then I think selling all that to upper management who's having to make the investment because they understand stuff they can see, touch, and feel. And the thing I got all the time, even with VMware, was they go, well, this is going to be way cheaper, right? Because we don't have any of the equipment. It's like, well, no, the equipment's just somewhere else. I mean, you're still paying for it. And then they're going, well, then we don't own these assets, and there's all this accounting stuff. So there's just all these things about how it's ill-defined that I think makes it a hard sell to everybody. Upper management love it until they see the bill. Then they go, oh, well, why does this cost more than what we're doing now? And it's like, but it's better.
I talked to a friend
ahead,
one time. She was working at a very large bank, huge, and she was in the UK. And she got called one morning, early, gets woken up at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, whatever, to fix some problem. As she's working away on it, her boss gets on the phone, calls her up. Hey, how's it going? I don't want to put any pressure on you or anything like that, but we've got to have this back up in the next half hour or so, or there's going to be a banking holiday in Germany.
Oops.
Yeah, and she got it back up, and they resolved all of that stuff.
No
but
pressure.
I mean, when you have, oh my gosh, I just about crapped when she said that. But when you've got that level, executives who are dealing with issues like that, yeah, we're going to send it out to the cloud to this other company who's going to take care of this stuff, and magic's going to happen, and it'll be wonderful. We'll replicate to all these other places, and I think you're always going to find some resistance from when you have that type of potential risk. If you're Chase or some other massive bank or whatever, the impact that you can have reaches way beyond just your own bottom line. And as soon as something happens, you're going to start getting congressmen or prime ministers or ministers of parliament, demanding answers, and your executives are going, well, we went out, we put our stuff in the cloud, and the conversation could go downhill from there really
here's
fast.
Another one. I could throw one on top of that. Think about this. We all have a psychological aversion to customer service, right? And we know with the cloud that we're transferring our ability when you've got everything's about to come apart to run down to the server room and just dive in there with your toolkit. And all of a sudden, I'm going, I can't do that now. My boss on the phone saying it's a banking holiday in Germany if you don't fix this right now. And instead, I'm on the phone listening to dun 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 dun, 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 dun. We value your business and we would really like to take your call. You are now in the queue. Your average wait time is 9 hours. Please hang on the line because we've, and it's like, I'm getting a bad feeling just sitting here talking about that because the minute when you were saying that, I started thinking customer service, and I was going, oh no, because I know it's like going to the DMV, the dreaded customer service call, and it's just I'm thinking, wow, I can't imagine the amount of stress I would have if I was sitting there. When I worked at the bank, we had 8,000 a minute was our billing time for downtime and for float. And I'm like, if I was sitting there with that clock ticking on 8,000 a minute on hold because they didn't pick up the phone, I would be, and then I got to go through layer 1, layer 2, layer 3 customer support before I get somebody who actually doesn't tell me, have I tried rebooting the mainframe? I'm going to be pretty unhappy.
Yeah, I think a lot of that can be solved with network design, though. I think that when implemented properly, the cloud will usually be less expensive and more reliable. And for people that are afraid to get their feet wet with it, a hybrid model is not hard to achieve. You can build up a secure tunnel between your on-premises data center and your cloud data center. And I've seen places where they have 80% of their web server farm is in the cloud and 20% of their web server farm is still on premises, and they spread the traffic across it. And if there was an absolute cloud failure, they could flip back to just on premises, and they're at 20% capacity, but at least they're up, right? And they can focus in on the critical situations. So there's ways to design around that. The problem is a lot of companies don't do that. They go all in, they push into the cloud, they dump everything in there, and they do it improperly, and you end up damaged. And I think part of that is our fault in the IT community. There's a lot of sysadmins who are afraid to move things into the cloud because they're worried about it basically eliminating their job. But the reality is the cloud is not this magic pill that solves every problem. Somebody's got to configure it and maintain it and monitor it, and it takes staff to do that. So it's really just a way to have access to resources that are beyond what you could normally have. And usually for less money, you can have a much more stable and robust network. It's just all about learning the features and technologies and things that are available and deploying them properly. And when that happens, it's a great solution.
Well, this has been great. I think we covered a lot of ground in this segment. Certainly brought to light some reasons why not to use a cloud virtual or use a hybrid, more so than I had thought. So I want to thank everyone for participating in this episode of Enterprise Security Weekly. Thanks, everyone, for watching and listening. We'll see everyone next time.